We
Okay,
won
we're
out.
on.
Let's try to.
All right, wow, we got a new clock. Look at us.
Yeah,
We got a new clock and an old
Wow.
clock. So they
Exciting,
can see,
sorry.
we can see, we all.
Here we are. Here we are. It is Tuesday, April 8th. It is 3:35. And we're gonna kick off our curriculum committee meeting. It is being live streamed on MSAD11.org. We have new committee assignments. So Ms. Tucker, if you could introduce.
Hi, I'm Michelle Tucker from Gardner.
Thank you. You're up, May Lady.
Megan Carlson, Gardner.
Thank you.
Becky Flex.
Alyssa Tracy.
Joanne O'Brien.
Very good. All right. We are ready, Angela. Thank you.
Excellent, great. Okay, so the first item for today is is like a showcase of our grades 6 through 12 interdisciplinary literacy initiative that we did this year. We just wrapped it up. So we have guests, so I'm gonna ask our guests to sit in the front row there so that you can have time to respond to questions and engage in dialogue. It's a little bit more interactive in our committee than the full board committee. So to set the stage for you, and we'll introduce you in a minute. To set the stage for you, I decided not to project today. I just figured we could talk and we'll talk enough that they'll create context for our guests. So the first document underneath your agenda is a framework that we've been using for 5 or 6 years now to kind of just provide the visual structure for what we're trying to achieve. And that is at the center, a coordinated and sustained focus on literacy to improve our students' skills in literacy and ultimately their growth and academic achievement in that area. Supported by a rigorous general education curriculum and instruction. So we've been doing a lot of refining and redefining of our curriculum. We then enhance that by having a targeted intervention system, which truly is a system now. It's continuing to develop, but there's a defined systems and structures and roles and processes. Extra instructional time for students to support that. And then ensuring that we are paying attention to students' wellness in terms of, and when it says social, emotional, behavioral supports, that's like, do we have a system in place when students are dysregulated? Do we have a system in place to make sure they know how to manage conflict and how to communicate effectively with each other? Those sorts of things. And we have curriculum that starts in early learning and goes all the way through to support that. And then it's just reinforced practices and classroom expectations and school-wide expectations. And then that's all supported by content strong teachers and staff. And using data to monitor and adjust. So this is the framework we're operating from, and that coordinated and sustained focus on literacy is what today's start is. And oftentimes in this committee, it gets a little dry talking about programs of studies and testing. So we try to bring in staff every so often to highlight some of the work so you actually get to engage with some staff. So that's what we're doing the first part of today's meeting. Then the next page is like, it should for you be color flipping back, front and back. What we did this year is last March, we kicked off with an event to clarify at the secondary level, what is our literacy data telling us? We got into kind of some scenarios that help people reflect and think about the experiences students were having and how we can improve upon that. And then we had a call to action about who wanted to become facilitators of this work with their colleagues, which is a really hard thing to do. It's one thing to teach students, it's another thing to facilitate your peers. And so people applied for that role. They secured the role and earned a stipend for their work, lots of extra hours outside of contract time. And then over the summer engaged in training on facilitation and on content literacy or disciplinary literacy. And then assumed the role of facilitator in August and secured a group of, well, we assigned a group of interdisciplinary, so cross-content educators. We had middle school facilitators with middle school educators and high school with high school educators. And as they learned different literacy strategies and such, teachers created a cycle of action, which is like action research. And they tried to, with a lens of how do we improve motivation, engagement, and literacy skills across the curriculum. And so then they worked with their facilitators to devise plans using specific strategies to implement, to collect evidence around that and understand what is my impact on learning. Did it work? How do I refine and adjust? And they started with like 2-week cycles, then 3 to 4 week cycles, and then 6-week cycles. And that is all kind of grounded in John Hattie's research on effective instructional practices, and anything that's been studied in this huge meta-analysis that has an effect size of greater than 0.4 is where we really want to be. That's where the greatest effective, if implemented in context well, all the features are in place. And the strongest effect size in that research is collective teach for efficacy, which basically means if you have a belief that students can learn and collectively we can actually change the outcomes that we're currently experiencing, influence student growth and achievement, and impact those who are at risk, then we can move the needle in our own data and our own outcomes. So that's what this was grounded on. And then they went through the whole year of this, some after school meetings with staff and some during workshop days and early release. And it resulted in a big showcase event that we held 1 year later exactly in March. And that was written up by the Department of Education. And I shared this with you over email, and I printed it so you have it in color. So I'm giving you the overview because what's really important is that you get the chance to talk to the people. So I did my own call to action and said, who has time on Tuesday at 3:30 to come and share? And that's a tough time for secondary because they're done at 2:30 and they have all kinds of other things in their lives going on. But I would like each of you to introduce yourselves and your roles. Your primary role, on top of the fact that you were interdisciplinary literacy facilitators. And then I have a series of questions to ask them and have them discuss, and you can interrupt and ask questions along the way and follow up with questions. And we'll go till just about 4:05, and then we'll have to transition to our other topic. But it'll be a good chance for you to have some engagement. Introductions?
I'll start.
Okay.
I'm Kirsten Perry. I'm a secondary literacy coach, and my role in this project was to support the facilitators with some trainings and on the spot triage.
I'm Shaughnessy LeClaire. I teach social studies at the middle school, 6th and 7th grade, and I was a literacy facilitator this year.
I'm Amanda Hayward, and I am 6th to 8th grade literacy interventionist, fancy title, and literacy specialist this year. I'm not specialist.
You are
I'm special. I tell myself
You
every
are.
day.
Yeah.
I like to hear it too. So yeah, literacy facilitator. That's
I'm
the
Laura
word.
Tranton. I teach 7th grade English, and I was also a facilitator.
Perfect. So we'll just start with, why did you decide to apply to become an interdisciplinary literacy facilitator? And did the experience meet your expectations? And I have no idea how they're going to answer. They did know the questions in advance, but
Oh, good.
I didn't. I didn't
prime them.
No,
That's nice of us. That's good. As good facilitators would,
Yes.
they have their written statements. I love it. That's perfect.
It's because it gives us a chance to process the
Totally.
questions and
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would babble.
Yeah, totally.
You know,
I get it.
So
Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
going to?
Free with words.
this is true, but it's under control. Yeah. Okay, well, I can answer
Yeah.
first. I applied for that particular role because I always look for opportunities where I can deepen my own learning, because it's going to be for the students' benefit. And I also was really interested in taking on a leadership role in education that felt comfortable with me, yet still a challenge. So I wanted a chance to spread my expertise as it is. It's always my goal to be the best educator I can, because our kids deserve it and they need it more than ever. It not only met my expectations, but it exceeded them. Our training was phenomenal. The work that we did was outstanding. Great Maine School Projects. We worked with this book this summer during our summer training. And not only did it give us so many new skills, but it goes far beyond that. It also adds to our own self-efficacy, and it taught us a lot about our colleagues and our students. Okay, I'm done.
Perfect.
Oh, good.
That was really good. Now we gotta follow that up. We can do it. I think I started doing, again, kind of echo Lori with that leadership within your role. Kind of I feel like I'm 20, but I'm not anymore. So I've been doing it for a while and I wanted to continue to grow. And I thought, oh, this is a great way to do so. And also to work collaboratively with others. In the middle school, I moved from elementary where your doors were opened all the time and we were co-teaching in and out. And middle school, people were friendly and nice, but you kind of shut into your rooms and that isolation feeling. So this was a chance to really I hadn't talked to some of these people, just in passing or at staff meetings. So it was a really great way to work together. And our whole goal was focused on how can we help these kids grow and do it together, because individually it's hard and you'll get burned out really quick. So we all need to, I think it's that I love a team, always about a team. It's gotta go with that. So being able to work together was one of my bigger reasons why I did this.
To be completely honest, I didn't initially jump at the opportunity to apply to become a facilitator. I was excited by the work that the district wanted to pursue. I'm passionate about giving students opportunities to learn. I was interested by the approach to increase student motivation because I know when the initial survey came out last spring, there wasn't just an emphasis on can students read and write, but also what are the barriers as to why our students aren't engaging in these things off the bat. And I was fascinated by that. But I was hesitant to become a facilitator or step into that role because I am young and early in my career, and I was worried about the way that I would be perceived by my colleagues. That was intimidating to me. To be at the helm of a group of 6 or 8 of my colleagues, I wasn't necessarily signing up for that. So I had encouragement from Kirsten and a few other people who kind of reached out and said, we know that you didn't apply initially, but we think you would be a fit for this role. And then after going through some of the training in the summer, and having other people to lean on who were in the same boat as me, I felt more confident to actually step into the position. So for me, that's kind of was my journey to step into this specific role. And I'm glad that I did because I feel like there's certain things with my practice that I've been using with kids that have been enhanced and more fine-tuned because I've been able to bounce those ideas off of my colleagues, not just with the people I facilitated in my group, but also these folks that I worked with in this leadership role. So
I'll just answer it. For my role, it's a little bit different, So Ava approached me with this incredible idea, a rough draft of her grant that she was writing for the state of Maine, and I was on board 100% from the beginning because it was so unique. And when you think about what our staff did, it's pretty amazing. And to be part of that was an honor and a privilege. And so, to think about an opportunity to help support, what do we have, 13?
Yeah.
13 facilitators grow in their leadership roles, not only learning about best practice and literacy, but how do you approach literacy across the content areas? And then also how do you work with adults? It's very different working with adults than it is with children. So it was fun for me to step out of my typical role and work with Angela and then working with this wonderful group of people.
Well, thank you all for taking on the challenge and telling us about it. Yeah.
How do you think this process impacted student learning?
Well,
I love this.
I know, I'm sorry. I actually think the process had a huge impact on students, even if the students didn't realize it was having an impact on them. But what I kept seeing every morning when I came into the building is that I loved walking through the building at 6:30 in the morning and seeing in different classrooms, content area teachers, they were so much more intentional about incorporating academic language into their lessons and posting it. And, we learned literacy is everywhere. And it was they're doing a great job, but it focused more on literacy. And we became like, it became a shared responsibility, not just isolated in a language arts classroom. It became a shared responsibility across all of our content, which was really a wonderful thing. Because I think that we learned how to analyze our student data more closely, to be more intentional with how we approach our teaching and our students' needs. And I think that was building wide. I think that was building wide for everybody who was involved. So I do think that we began to tailor instruction so much better. And it was lovely. But I would get so excited when I'd walk through like the art room early in the morning and I'd see all these vocabulary words on the board. Like I was like, yay. Or in the science room, oh, just made me so happy. So.
That's great.
She kind of said what I said.
Oh,
I think
sorry.
we wrote the same thing, but as she was talking and it kind of popped, I didn't have to write it down. I think it really put teachers in the student seat. We ask students every day to learn, to grow, to put effort in. And I think we as teachers had to do that. And that's hard because you get into your routine and you every day and you're like, what? I have to do this plan. It's hard. We're not great learners at times. And I think we had to be. And since we had to be, then you kind of had that student perspective in mind and you changed some of your approaches to what you did because you felt that. You remembered what it was like to kind of sit in that seat and being asked to do something when you couldn't read something and you're embarrassed because I can't read it. And so you had people giving students different level text. It's the content in their seventh grade, but it's at their reading level and they felt that confidence. And I think that was shown with our students. And like Lori said, maybe not all of them understood exactly the effort that we put in, but with us, I think we saw the growth in our colleagues. And because of that, it did impact students in a way.
I would agree with what Lori and Amanda said, and I would just add on that I think from a collegial standpoint and with my coworkers in PLC meetings even, having a little bit more of a overarching, like a learning target, like you mentioned for coworkers, has changed the tone of the meeting. Feel like there's more focus, not just on looking at data, but also looking up strategies on how to help support students. But from this process specifically with students, well, one, we do have the data to back it up because we collected it. And I saw, not just in my own classroom, but across the classrooms of the people in my group, that focus on these specific strategies did increase student learning and also motivation and engagement. Specifically in the science teacher's classroom that I worked with, she took a survey of the students' completion of their work at the beginning of the time that we studied the cycle, and then at the end, and she saw growth in students passing in their work and at least attempting it, which tells me that she probably differentiated it so they could engage. So while a student, they're not all getting hundreds on everything, it's showing that they're at least willing to try because it's now at their level. So I think that's a success for student learning. Them just having the opportunity to engage is a big piece of it. In my own classroom, focusing on motivation and growth mindset. I even saw kids that were fighting me tooth and nail at the beginning of the school year, not wanting to engage, going from like, I'm not doing this, I'm not gonna try, I'm not even gonna pick up my pencil, to like at least trying, because they knew that the classroom expectation was that they needed to be on task and put a little bit of effort in and try before they asked a question. And now this specific student is like, comes to class and he's trying every single day, and I couldn't, ask anything more of him. And he's not necessarily, a traditional student, but he's at least trying. And I think that is because of the differences that I made with my approach to talking about effort and motivation in the classroom. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I have a lovely privilege of seeing, getting into everybody's classrooms and seeing some very wonderful things going on in the individual classrooms. And I think about this idea of literacy. And, you know, I've had teachers in the past say to me, well, I teach science, I don't teach kids how to read. And I always felt that comment was frustrating because, well, yeah, you do. But really there was this transfer of culture where we all began to realize that every single one of us was a teacher of literacy. So how do you talk like an artist? How do you write like a scientist? How do you read graphs like a mathematician? And those, I saw teachers changing that attitude about, well, yeah, I don't want the literacy teachers teaching my students how to write like a scientist. I know how to write like a scientist, so I'm going to teach them how to write the way scientists should write. And that was a huge shift in the attitude of the school and the culture of the school. And then I began to see teacher work coming out into the hallways. Social studies teachers posting the cartoons their students wrote and illustrated, and vocabulary words on the walls, and student presentations and sentence stems for conversations coming out. So it was beautiful to watch. If you, I invite you to walk through the middle school, you will see evidence of literacy in every hallway. And it is, I think we sort of, it was like the lobster in a warm pot of water that boils slowly, it doesn't really recognize it. But we had the high school facilitators come to the middle school, and we did a literacy walk around the building. And their feedback to us was pretty astounding. Like, they saw evidence of literacy in every single place they visited. So that's a beautiful thing to see too. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was, I have the privilege of visiting a lot of classrooms. So I may see a student in science class and I see them in another class and in another class and in the lunchroom. And watching them transfer skills from one class to the other, or making a comment about something that happened. Oh, we did this in Miss So-and-so's class. Or when a teacher puts sentence stems down, oh, we're gonna talk today, because they know that talking and engaging with others and thinking through is a really big deal. So. You just said.
What did you learn from this experience that will help our system continuously improve?
One of the most valuable takeaways was realizing how much we can gain from collaborating across grade levels. There's so much talent and there's so much insight right in our own building. And making space for that collaboration is really key. It was. I learned to adjust my own expectations. I had to be more flexible, creative, and thoughtful in instructional planning. But most importantly, I think for me personally, I rediscovered how energizing leadership can be for me, because I love working with people, adults or kids. It really doesn't matter to me. I believe that many of my colleagues will approach literacy with a broader perspective, especially if we continue to provide opportunities for professional growth and continue to try these innovative approaches within our classrooms and within our, building. So it was it was the best thing I've ever done. Personally, it was one of the best things I've ever done. So it was great.
I'm so glad to hear that.
It really was.
No, I think that is just so great that you're willing, that we all have to be lifelong learners. We need to be, don't have to be, we need to be.
But there was a sense of learning and a sense of joy sitting in these meetings with other content area teachers. And over time, as soon as they became more relaxed, you learned, we had very in-depth conversations about education itself, and you learned what their struggles were in their classroom. But as a collective group, we could also work with each other and help each other. And that's what it's all about. That's what it should be all
The
about.
word is joy.
Joy.
Joy in the classroom.
Right. And adults aren't that much different from kids. They have bad days too.
It's true, we just way more.
I was known for buying a bunch of toys for one meeting,
Good for you.
because I knew that they were like over the edge.
Yeah.
So,
Good for you.
they were so happy with their puzzles and etch a sketches, but it was, but adults need that stuff too.
Yes.
They really do.
100%. Yep.
And so, and they developed a sense of trust with each other. So I think next year will be wonderful if we continue it.
Exactly. Sorry, I lost.
I didn't
my thoughts,
babble
but
too
You
much.
didn't, I like it. I think the biggest thing it was just, we sat in PLC meetings for the past few years and we had, it's not Michelle's this year, Gabi came back and I apologized to her this summer because I thought you were really trying to push us forward and move us forward on a Tuesday morning when I just had like a lot of kids at once and they weren't doing what they want. And I didn't recognize that until I went through this facilitator training and the purpose and drive behind that. So for me personally, like you said, with that leadership role, to take that on, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to go in and teach adults and want them to want to find that joy or to continue that learning. And I think it just made me appreciate other people more and what they're trying to do. And then hopefully share that with colleagues. And I think one of the biggest words I've said this year, there's two. One is purpose behind my teaching. What is the purpose of what I'm trying to help the students gain? And I kind of lost that for a while. Like it wasn't just the book, but the purpose behind it. And then reflection. We really need to do better at reflecting. We ask the kids to do it all the time. And I think if we start to do that, there's just so many things that is possible and not take things personally and think you're like, oh, I'm a bad teacher if I had to change something. No, that makes you a better teacher if you're changing and action plan and you're just constantly reflecting on what you did, how did you do it, what was my purpose, do I have to do something different? If it worked, great, but it's probably not gonna work great for period 6 because it's period 6, the end of the day. So you're just, even within the day, you reflect and just always remember to do that. And I think that's what I took away from it. It was a lot. And working with people that were like-minded and, we met on days that weren't meeting days because we wanted to be on the same page and have the same experience as a whole group and not feel that competition. Like I give her a hard time. Oh, she brought in toys for her people and I once in a while did candy, but it wasn't, it was her, right. She didn't do anything. So like perfect balance, but it was
Well.
nice to be able to share that experience with other people in the same boat as well. And that way you didn't feel like you were, again, isolated.
I think having those extra meetings
Mhm.
shows you that we really were dedicated to doing the best that we could possibly do. It wasn't the time. It's not about that. It's about having the opportunity to be together and do the best we can do for our colleagues as well.
Well, you all dipped your toe in leadership.
What?
You all dipped your toe into leadership
Right.
and you tried it on and you had some incredible success.
Yeah.
And I think that's big too, that it doesn't always have to come from the top down. It can,
Right.
we've got some fantastic leaders in our.
The word I just thought of as you're all talking is you had to be a little vulnerable to let it in,
Yeah.
right? And then you
Yeah.
were able to like be in your conviction to continue it, right?
Yes.
So I appreciate you all for doing that. It feels really awful when you start, right? But then you're like, hey, I'm good. I can go chat with somebody about it and figure it out. So that's good. That's your own growth as well. Awesome.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's not competitive, it's
No.
cooperative.
Right.
And that you're working together to get to a point. We talked a lot about, well, you said processes and strategies and stuff like that without getting into any specifics. But I was wondering how you were able to get the kids engaged into why I need to know this. Why is this important for me to know and for me to be able to express myself and what I'm thinking about that particular topic and how it relates to other topics. And I was wondering if you used characters in literature as a way of exploring conflicts and what could have been done differently to have a different outcome, or in history, people in history, what were they facing? What was it like at that time? Or in science, the fact that women and minorities often didn't get the credit for the work that they did. How did they overcome those obstacles and why was it important for them to do the work that they did? So my question is how did you get them to understand the why we're learning this?
I think everybody worked on motivation, right?
Yeah, we did work on
productive struggle,
motivation. We also, many of us took a workshop from Chris Tovani. And in 7th grade, we did the Witch of Blackbird Pond and how it related to immigration. and we made placemats. So looking at the similarities between what happened during the witch trials and how it relates to what is happening today, so that they could have a real world connection. That's the why, and it kind of makes them think. Plus, it is good because for the visual learners, there's some pictures, there's graphs, and there's little clippets. I mean, so it's good for everybody. So that was what, and so we did use literature for that piece.
I will say for my social studies classes, this year more so because of some of the other PD that we've gone to. One way that I'll hook kids in is I'll let them generate questions. Beginning of the year, I talk about how a historian's job is to ask questions and then try to answer them. So through a placemat or a gallery walk, I might have the kids look at certain things sometimes that are a little like, why is that? Or like, what's that? Why is that person holding that newspaper? And I tell them they can ask any kind of question. It can be a question about something specific in the picture or a question about like, what does it make you wonder past that? And then sometimes I'll build the lessons or the unit around those questions that the students asked. So even if it's not their specific question, they know that somebody in the class or somebody in another class might have asked that question, and it's an important one for us to explore as historians, I tell them. So that's one way this year that I've tried to engage them more, and I think it's like that piece of student choice and voice, that they've had an opportunity to kind of put their own spin on it or something that they're genuinely curious about.
Yeah, so she said that student choice was a more where they didn't feel that they were told, this is what you're doing. They had more of a choice. And then because I work with struggling readers, I really needed to give them the opportunity to feel successful. So we read every single day out loud to each other. They correct each other. They look at each other. So they're okay if they make a mistake and they learn from those mistakes. And so they're constantly reflecting and checking in on how they're doing and giving them, if they're in 7th grade and giving them material, maybe they're in a 4th grade reading level. You can take that content and you can create something that makes them feel that success. So that engagement comes because they feel capable. They're not lost. And if they are encouraged, we always underline the words we don't understand. Let's focus on that first and then we move on. So it's that constant, like you said, the choice and the questions. That's a big thing that I took away this year is just always ask those questions. You want to be curious. You want to know why you're doing it. And so you just, and give them the answer. Sometimes there isn't a great answer and that's okay. Sometimes you got to work through that productive struggle is a big thing and you've got to feel uncomfortable. Like it's okay to feel uncomfortable and most things in life, you're going to feel really uncomfortable, but if you shut down and give up, that just doesn't work out. And they're very selfish minded, middle school. I mean, they think about themselves. So if you can just make it be, okay, now make it about yourself. What if you were in
Put your
there?
shoes.
Put yourself in those shoes.
Right.
As soon as you talk about that, they're all willing,
That's
like,
brilliant, yeah.
they are so willing to talk about themselves.
And a lot of those questions you've framed up, Joanne, are already part of the curriculum. It's already how that's because we are not, in many spaces, the book is the vehicle to get to the skill of critical analysis, comprehension, dialogue, intonation, vocabulary, all those things. And the text is the framework to support that under the skill development. And that's a real shift in our system. Historically, our system is very much the book is the curriculum. And now we're really shifting to what are the skills we're developing and how do we scaffold them year to year? And then how do we make really smart text selections to support that over time? And then sometimes we may retire a book and try it or differentiate. We have like the Holocaust unit, when the social studies is teaching Holocaust as required, the literacy team is using like first person narratives. And so they're using the Anne Frank, but they're also using other resources and text levels around the same content, but the exploration of self through conflict, while they're going through like what is the historical context of Holocaust. And happening around the same time so kids can start making those connections. So it's more strategic. So they are doing a lot of what you're asking. And then this layered in productive struggle, engagement, motivation, specific literacy skills, specific use of academic vocabulary to strengthen that and make that comprehension more accessible.
I love everything you've said. I have maybe a difficult question, and I don't expect anybody to have an answer. Maybe you can get back to us with it. We know that Maine is struggling. We know that our testing scores have just gone way down over the past 20 years. And so what I've heard each of you talk about has been students that are below grade level. And so I love what you've done, like, and the Witch of Blackburn Pod, oh my gosh, I love that book. I read it many times when I was a youngster. Do you have data that would illustrate maybe how many students rose in their reading comprehension as a result of this initiative? And could that data be compared to other schools who didn't participate in this initiative? So I don't know if you.
I'm actually gonna answer that.
Okay. All right.
So, yes, they have data based on their cycles of action, because that was the requirement.
Okay.
That they had to, but that data is not scalable or transferable because it was based on a specific implementation strategy in a specific context. However, our last agenda item today is testing. So, our scores actually only dropped during COVID. We've actually recovered since COVID to pre-COVID scores, and now we're working on growing those to get to the actual levels we'd like to see in this district. And we differentiate, I mean, we disaggregate our data, so we know what our subgroups are at. And you'll have an opportunity on this committee to really explore that, which is kind of fun and exciting, and it will help you see those pieces. And the best tool for that in terms of comparison to other districts is what we call the NUIA state assessment. And every school takes it at the same period of time, same window of time, and that's actually coming up in May. So in June, you'll get a report and we'll dig through it here more than we will at the full board meeting because we have more time.
Right.
And there's also historical reports that are in old minutes, but we can direct you to them if you want to look through
Sounds
them.
good, yeah.
And so not to jump in, but like this was specifically like in your class, do you see growth? And then across, when we did the gallery walk or the showcase event, we were able to see where that took shape. And then the real test is, how is this influencing us long-term, right? On these measures that are more standardized and comparable, which they don't have access to yet because we haven't taken them.
I think after doing this years after, like, we've done a lot of Riverview used to be like a SIP school where then people come in and it's a process. So like, we always bring back to COVID, and we're getting out of that doing, because we were just surviving, we're doing, and now we are getting back to that learning and purpose driven. And so this is that first year of starting, and really I think we're gonna see some growth but I think it's just like that action plan where it's just, we're now gonna build off of what we just started.
And it's a shift
then-
in the culture.
And the shift in the
Yeah.
culture of everybody, so.
It's like 3 years to do
Yeah, it
I'd
takes
just
a
like to
while.
add one little tidbit to answer your question. So the cycles of action sort of required a pre-assessment. And then teachers tried on this new strategy, whatever it may have been. And most teachers did at least 3 or 4 in the whole year.
And it wasn't standardized, like we didn't all have the same one. It was kind of
Yeah,
based
whatever
on what your students needed in your
needs, or,
class.
yeah. So, and then they did a post-assessment and they could track the growth. And what I saw from my level is that teachers, instead of looking at this great big test that they never felt connected to, it seemed so big that they didn't have, how do I possibly influence this? They're seeing at that really ground level that if I do this with my teaching, it impacts my students and their growth and their learning and understanding. Let me repeat that and try it in a different way. So I just wanted to say that the NUIA felt really ambiguous, I think, before, like it was impossible to address, but now teachers feel a little bit empowered, or quite empowered, that they can impact student growth.
Would you say that's because they're leveraging their own personal strengths through this program to, I mean, if they're confident, then they're going to impart confidence to their
Yeah,
students.
because we had so many layers. We had people working by themselves in their classrooms, maybe working with me or the math coach. But then they had their literacy groups that they work together. And then we have our professional learning communities where we work together. So we're developing this belief in ourselves as individuals. And as a group, we're developing that trust that together, this collective efficacy, we can make a difference
Yeah.
in every single little kiddo. Yeah, before this, it was, oh, there's that big test that
Right.
Teaching to the test.
And I,
Yeah, and I also just wanna add, like, we are looking at the kids who are at the meeting and above meeting, right? What are we doing for them too? So I don't wanna just focus
Right.
on
That's
struggling
right,
learners.
right,
That's-
yeah.
Yeah, did you wanna add?
oh, I was just gonna add that I think too, this year, through the facilitation and having more open communication with colleagues and also through things that we've been doing in PLC, I know colleagues that had conversations with specific students to try and boost them or give them confidence walking into those tests, going from fall to winter. So I think as professionals, having a better understanding of that data and how it drives us and looking at it, we can use that meaningfully with kids. And I know that people did have personal conversation with kids to say, hey, like, this is where you scored here. I really think you're here.
I believe in you.
I believe in you. And some of those things we've been talking about in class, you know, you can apply. Like when I say, make sure you eliminate answers you know that are wrong, or if you need to go back and reread the question, like make sure you're also implementing those things. And I think that's something that happened more this year across the board than was happening in the past. And I think us doing this and having open conversations around it is part of the reason why, which is also good for
Yeah,
kids, I think.
Because it's not
at
the
end of
only
day.
thing that shows growth.
Right,
Those every
right.
day, we see every day but it's something we look at. And so we were really purposely looking at it and seeing even looking at, well, you took 12 minutes on this 40 question test. Are you really showing what you really know? There's those small conversations and then showing the small success in the classroom. It just makes you kind of go into it in a better headspace and like, oh, I'll take this a little bit more seriously and really try to show what I know. And doing things like the cycle of action will.
It sounds like you're also teaching them testing strategy as well as the content, because, right, if you're taking this amount of time to do 12 questions, what you really need to do is go through what you know right away,
Right.
all the way through, and then go back and eliminate, and then see if you can get clues from the text that's
Read the
right there.
question, know the purpose of why you're looking
Exactly.
at the text in a certain way,
Right.
rather than just looking at the text and seeing all these words. Well, what is the end goal? Well, I need to answer this question. Well,
And what are they actually
and what
asking?
are they actually
you?
asking? So it's just all those basic kind of working backwards planning type and.
And math teachers saw the power of teaching vocabulary and for the word problems, and even with the directions, sometimes the vocabulary wasn't quite what they were used to seeing. So our math teachers also saw the value in that kind of work.
Translating, it could be said this way, it could be said that way.
These are all the words that mean multiply.
Yeah.
They looked at that chart and was like, I didn't know that.
I have one small antidote. When we did the NUIAs in December, one of my students who struggles, he went up 12 points in literacy. I was so happy that I went and found him in one of his other classes and pulled him out. And I said, first of all, can I have permission to give you a hug? I said, I am so darn proud of you. I cannot believe you went up 12 points. You know, and when kids know too that you believe in them and you take that extra moment. I mean, I was so tickled that made my whole day, that he went up 12 points, you know? And after that, it's almost like he still likes to get a lot of attention to himself, but he also is far more honest with me and he will try harder with me, you know, because I keep saying, I believe in you. And I know I can believe in you. You just have to let me help you get there.
You know you can do it.
And I know you can do it. So,
Well, kudos for the article too. I mean, that was, when you sent it, I was like, wow.
And
nice.
someone from the department, Kathy Bertini, wrote it.
Yeah, that's great.
Bertini's amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
This was so
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Glad I got to be here for this.
Appreciate your
For coming. We
time.
appreciate your time.
Thank you, thank you for the time.
Have a great, thanks for staying late.
Yeah, of course.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, David, you're in the hot seat now, sir.
All by myself?
I know.
Let's go.
Lori will stay with.
So we're gonna transition topics right
I'm
now.
done.
Oh,
yeah.
And I don't think we're gonna be able to do this in 10 minutes.
Right.
So are we okay to go 20 minutes or so?
Yeah. That should be fun.
Whatever.
I don't wanna race you
Yeah, we
through
don't need
it,
to
it's
rush.
time sensitive.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna connect the dots to the curricular part, but at the finance meeting last week, we were asked to continue to pursue decisions that will result in a more manageable budget for our towns. And so this is not something that we just did in 5 days, but it was something we were sort of we've explored a few times and have held off quite a bit. So I'll give you a little context and there's some charts here. There's 2 layers here going on, and David's here. I encouraged him to join us because he has a different perspective, and I think it's important to hear that too. We have 5 staff members in the in the K to 12 music performing arts department, really. And so there's no names on this, but we have 2 elementary music teachers. We have an elementary band teacher who spends a little bit of time at the middle school. We have a middle school teacher and we have a high school teacher who oversees all of them. And so what you have here is just sort of the acronyms for the buildings where they work, and their course enrollment, and obviously the elementary schools teachers share 2 buildings, so their enrollment's higher, and then it looks different. It's just secondary and elementary are 2 sort of different animals. And this district has made a real commitment for well before my time to introduce band in 5th grade. So all of the elementary students receive music instruction once per week. It's one of their specials. In 4th grade, they can also opt into chorus once per week. And in 5th grade, they can opt into, they have music and they can opt into chorus and they can opt into band. And in band, it is instrument instruction. And so there's a screening process that happens to identify like what kind of instruments might they be interested in, and kind of getting that set up with families. And then in their 5th grade year, the performing arts community works with the principals and sets the schedule for small group technical band and technical instrument instruction. So like, how does this instrument work and how do you play it? And there's technical language. David can help you out with that if you want to know it. But it's that side of it, and they do come together and actually play together too. So it does result in applied learning with their instruments and across instruments, and it's pretty miraculous in my mind that they get there in a year. And then so the reason for that is so when they get to 6th grade, they can start ensemble instruction. So instead of small group instrument, they're sort of at grade level band or grade level chorus, but we're talking about band. So that's been a real luxury in this district and something we're proud of, the community is proud of historically in this district. But it does result in a complicated schedule. For students, for staff, and to honestly, to have a band teacher go across 3 buildings. So it results in some time, but a lot of travel, but some time. And you were asking us to refine our system and tighten it up. And we've cut 6 teaching positions and multiple ed tech positions, and we've cut programming resources. And so when we were asked to go further, we had to look at this. So this is an administrative proposal, not a full pre-K to 12 performing arts proposal, the first page. And that is to maintain band, but to shift it from curricular, which means it's happening during the school day as part of the instructional options for students, to co-curricular, which means it's happening outside of the school day as part of options and choices for students. There are 3 proposals there, the 1, 2, and 3. The first one is our preferred one, and the reason for that is because students would register and sign up as they do now for band, but at a different timeline, which is the second conversation. And we would organize them into instrument type instructional groups, which is how it's done now. But the difference is, instead of having that instruction with their small group peers in their school-based setting, they would have the ability to take a bus from their home when the middle school and high school take a bus. But they could have seats up front if we want to be super cautious about that, but and take the bus to the middle school, which would be period 1, they would have instruction. So that's what the 7:28:15 is. So that's period 1 at the middle school, but it's not yet school time at the elementary school technically.
Yes.
And then they would exit band instruction and be escorted through the building, and they could have grab breakfast to go if they want to, and then they get on a bus, 3 separate buses, 1 bus for Helen Thompson, 1 for Riverview, and 1 for Pittston, based on the current bus routes it works, and they would be brought back to their school, and they basically start school with their peers when everyone else starts school. So they wouldn't be missing their elementary school. Transportation would be provided, which option 2 also has transportation provided, but they'd get back to school a little bit later. And option 3, there's no at-home transportation, which is why we're trying to avoid that. That makes it even more of a barrier for families. So, here's the thing, it's not in finance yet, because for this to function, it would have to be a decision around teaching and learning. Are you comfortable with moving 5th grade band from a curricular opportunity, it's not an opportunity, to a co-curricular opportunity? That also the students, instead of so it would be like the trumpet players from all 3 schools coming together and learning trumpet on one day. And I'm not gonna do this right, because there's a complicated schedule, which you see an example of here, and it does take a little work, and we have to get some sense of who's signing up and all that kind of stuff. But the flute players and the clarinet players, and which players, based on your instrument group, would go on Mondays, which Tuesdays, so you'd go once a week, just like they get band instruction once a week, but they'd go with probably a slightly larger group, and then they'd, but the same instrument group, and then they'd head back. And that always changes year to year, which instruments the kids are most interested in. Some years drums are a big deal, and some years, I don't know, French horns are a big deal. I noticed that trombones. Thanks, David. So that's why this is here. This does also require registration to happen in the spring instead of waiting till the 5th grade year in the fall, with an add drop period built in the fall for kids who move in or last minute change their mind, don't or do want to join. We've been having that conversation around spring registration for quite a long time, because one of our biggest challenges has been fall registration ends up meaning we don't start band until the middle of October, and then we have this band instructor running around trying to get band going for 6 weeks, and it's not efficient, it's not a good use of his time, it's not a good use of our students' time, and it disrupts schedules, because we finally get a schedule going, and then we disrupt the entire schedule and rebuild it to add band in October. So that's an element of this, but the biggest question and the ultimate vote is, do you support moving from curricular to co-curricular? Just a little bit of, so the bottom part of this is the, just a shift in registration, which we will want to shift in registration, whether you support the proposal for curricular to co-curricular or not. The registration part is a procedure. We're gonna do it anyway. The curricular versus co-curricular is definitely a decision at this committee level. And then lastly, on the back, is just clarification. Again, I removed names. I don't think that's the point here. This isn't about any person's skill set at all. We have very skillful instructors. It's just sort of how their prep time and such is working, but there's some caveats because some prep time is actually like, department meeting prep or theater prep, because like David has to do a lot of theater prep stuff that's not, he doesn't get a special little assigned block in Power School, but we know he does it when we have 2 plays and a musical and a bunch of other stuff going on in the theater. And so it takes away from his time. I'm not able to extract how many minutes. So I wanted to put a caveat in there and make sure we're really clear about that.
Question,
Yeah.
if we transition from curricular to co-curricular, does that mean one of these positions are gonna be cut?
Yep. That would be, so that was sort of the, is there, in which way can we be more efficient if we have to influence the budget? And that's why this is coming up now. There is a way to make it more efficient, but it requires a shift from curricular to co-curricular. So like Andrea, for the finance meeting, has like plan A, B, and C, and she doesn't know what she's sharing because she doesn't know what you're gonna decide. But the board has said you need to cut more, and so we've had to explore more, and this is one of the explorations, but it has a curriculum committee implication.
Are we allowed to ask? You
Yes.
mentioned David has a different
Yeah.
opinion.
Yep.
I'd be curious to hear what yours is. Yeah.
Really, do you want me from here or there or?
Probably just up
You could
front
just
where
come right
you're
up
closer.
Which one's the hot seat?
Yeah, right.
Whatever one you sit in.
Right, I guess so, yeah, pretty much. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk. Like my colleagues, in other departments before me, I've prepared some things, because for me personally, you know, I've been in this decade for decades. And so, you know, anything like this where it's a change, possible change, is very personal. And because there's a lot of time, there's a lot of sacrifice, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, you know, put into this program. And so, you know, my mind is spinning right now. And so putting things down on paper is important for me. And I apologize if, you know, I'm looking at this more than I'm, you know, looking at you folks. But first of all, I want to say that as a longtime community member, taxpayer, I appreciate, you know, the situation that we're in, you know, in this district. I realize there's some difficult decisions to be made. Nothing's ever easy. I wish I don't know if I've been here over 3 decades, and I don't think there's ever been an easy year, has there? I mean, Becky, you and I have been here the longest,
Same
right?
amount of time, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know
No,
that
there's never been an easy
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
No.
But as I'm sure you can understand, this proposed change and position cut would have some negative effects to the program in terms of where we are right now. I can give a little bit of history of where we are and what we're trying to do currently in terms of a rebuild, but also just the negative effects of moving curricular opportunity for students at the 5th grade level, not only outside of the school day, but also to a different facility to try something that they have never tried before. In moving this outside of the school day, I don't believe, I could be wrong, but I don't believe students would look forward to having the opportunity to have an extended school day when other classmates, our fellow classmates don't. Meaning they're waking up earlier, they're having to get on a bus with high school and middle school students, which I think could be an issue. I would hope it wouldn't be, but we know how, things are. If you've got these fifth graders who are young, who are impressionable, they're sitting on a bus, even if they're sitting on the front. There's high school and middle school kids that are coming on the bus. And even physically distanced, they're still going to be, around to hear potential inappropriate language or that type of stuff. We're asking, as I mentioned, the kids to get up earlier in the morning. The other thing to look at is a lot of the students are involved with after-school activities, whether it be rec sports, dance, all kinds of different opportunities. And if we're asking them to start their school day an hour earlier and then go and do a full day of school, and then after school, they're going to whatever activity it is, then that creates a long day for those students. And I think the biggest thing is for me looking at the situation is the fact that you've got fifth graders that are, as I said, are young, are impressionable. They're at the top of their school in terms of their building. And then what we're doing is we're asking them, actually at the end of their fourth grade year, but could be at the beginning, to do all of that, to start their school day early, to try something new that they've never tried before. They don't know if it's something that they're gonna like or not. This is an opportunity for them to try this. And to go to a new building, a bigger building that they've never been to before. There's a lot of nervousness, there's a lot of apprehension that's gonna sink in. My own kids went through this district. They're grown and adults now. But I remember those days of them being fifth graders, and just the thought of going up to the middle school was nerve-wracking for them. And I remember taking my kids to the middle school after hours, and they would follow me to the middle school, they'd follow me to high school, they were around all the time, so they knew the schools. But it was that idea of going to a different school, a bigger school, and just that nervousness. And I'm afraid that students would not be as open to trying a band instrument with all of these perceived barriers, which I think will reduce the numbers that are in the beginner program right now. We are currently in a rebuild. COVID, as many of you know, and as Angela and I have talked a lot about, back during COVID, music, my opinion, incorrectly was considered dangerous. There was a lot of restrictions. We went out of our way to make sure that we had all of the PPE in places and so forth.
We worked closely together on that.
We
That
did,
wasn't
we
a-
worked very closely. There was a lot of phone
Restrictions were
calls, a lot of
external from us.
emails,
Yes,
and
right,
a
right.
lot of money. But even still, we had to be outside 14 feet apart in order to be able to do anything. Kids walked away at that point. Parents were pulling kids away from the program at that point because music was considered dangerous. And it all stemmed from, that church choir out west that, a lot of them got sick there at the beginning of COVID. And then all of a sudden, boom, music was considered dangerous. So we lost a lot of students. We had a beginning program that we worked hard with Angela and the administrative team to keep going during that year of 2020, 2021, but it was less than ideal because we had to be remote. Kids starting in January, they were remote 1 day a week as a group during the Wednesday office times. Their microphones couldn't be on together because of the latency issues. So they're sitting in their room or at their house doing the lessons with Mr. Newton on the other end. We only had 20 students that signed up as beginners that year. And before that, we were in the area of 70 to 80 beginners that we would start every single year. Those students, and I had this conversation with my students at the high school about a month ago, those students in that 5th grade program are now freshmen this year. Of those 20 students that started back in 2020, 2021, through a little bit of retention, there are 8 that survived at the high school. And they're great, they're working hard. And I told the other students that, the upperclassmen, they're like, are you kidding me? Holy cow, how did you guys are amazing. But there was just a smaller number of beginners, and then through that natural attrition, you're not gonna have, you have 20 beginners that start, you're not gonna have 20 students at the high school. Before COVID, we had a high school band of 105 that year of 2019, 2020 in a school of 600 kids. That's unheard of. We have lost a lot over the years. We're nowhere near that now, but we're starting to see that rebuild, where this year represents the bottom, and we're starting to see that rebuild. There's an uptick in the signups for band. Angela and I have talked about that. And we're starting to see that. This year's beginners, we're at 74 beginners. I confirmed with Adam Newton today, which is back to the levels that we were at, pre-COVID. So we're seeing that rebuild, and I'm really concerned that if we take that out of the school day and we ask them to go up to the middle school, that it's going to take us back to those 20, 30 beginners a year. And on top of that, with those reduced ensemble sizes, there's reduced instrumentation. It limits the curriculum that we can reach with our students. The main learning results identifies where students should be in terms of grade level music for performing ensembles. Part of that depends on instrumentation, part of that depends on ability, part of that depends on group size. Right now, we're not at the level that we need to be for many reasons. Musically, the kids are working hard. I have the best students around. And same thing with the middle school students, and they're working hard and they're dedicated. But we just don't have, the size, we don't have the resources, we don't have the instrumentation right now that we used to. And that's frustrating. And for many years, it was very hard on me, and it was gut-wrenching. Coming out of COVID, but we're starting to see that turnaround, and I would hate to see that be derailed.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
And I do recognize where David is coming from. And he and I have worked closely together over the years. We don't always see eye to eye, but we work really
That's all right.
closely together.
We can agree to
And
disagree, right?
we support students in their band
That's right.
and all their musical development, chorus and music instruction and music theory and all the things. A couple of things I do need to add though. We do have some REACH students, that's our gifted and talented program, who do come to the middle school for period 1 math. They've exceeded the expectations in elementary math, and we provide transportation to support them in elementary math. Same thing, they can either have a parent drop them off or they can take the bus in, and then we have a bus that takes them back to their sending school. They have to qualify, of course, but they do, and then we even have 5th graders taking 7th grade math at the moment. So those are definitely smaller numbers of students than band students, but we do have that.
There's also a different, just to jump in there
It's
if
a
I could.
more diverse group in
Yep,
band than
yep.
there is in REACH. I
Yep.
understand that, that's true. The AM bus, So I actually spent some time with Jeff Ellis, our Director of Transportation, around that. Some of the concerns David raised about the fifth grade students being on a high school bus, the secondary student bus. I also raised, absolutely. But he says the issue is not the AM bus, it's the PM bus. The AM bus, the high school and secondary kids for the most part are barely even awake. It's our smaller numbers. It's not where our issues are lying, and we can certainly be strategic of where the students are placed. And parents can drop kids off if they prefer. Additionally, we have students who are in band who go to the Boys and Girls Club before school even starts. So they would get their breakfast there and take the bus over to the middle school. So some of our kids are at clubs at, 6:30, 7 a.m.
It's
already.
for a long day.
It is a long day, but it's already their long day. I agree, it's a long day. Absolutely. I have kids, they do a million things after school. I know it's a long day to add something before it. I'm not saying it's the best idea. I'm saying it's and under the circumstances, we're trying to propose an idea that has the fewest number of barriers for families, which is making sure there's transportation, making sure the breakfast is still provided, making sure they have a trusted adult, making sure they have opportunity to access band instruction. The other thing I need to add is that we don't see the budget getting better in the next few years. We could be wrong, projections could change all over the place, but with valuations and the state budgets and the state system, we just don't see it getting better. We have raised with you that at some point, we're gonna have to look at consolidation differently. We might not be ready to consolidate a school yet, like close a school yet. We don't know. We haven't proposed that. We don't know. But we may have to start looking at, can the middle school hold 5th to 8th grade students?
Right.
Which we're close to being able to do. But we have to understand what the budget implications are of that. So this isn't a trial to see if 5th graders can hang out in the middle school, but it is the notion that 5th graders shouldn't be with 8th graders is something we need to be. They're not going to be. They're gonna walk in the building and be escorted to band, and then they're gonna be escorted back to the bus. Just like our 6th grade students don't have a ton of interaction with our 8th grade students already because they have their own special wing. And right now their instructional block for 5th grade, once it starts, they do lose core instruction. Not every kid, there's a few kids that get their instructional block during the intervention period that we have set up, a staggered intervention period, which means they're not getting an intervention. But oftentimes students in music, research says perform better in academics anyway because of the intersection between music and learning. So I totally understand that. And it's a sacrifice we make, right? We just have to decide. We have a decision-making tree that we use to help figure out when is the best time to pull students from classes in order to get band instruction once a week. They're not getting pulled every day. It is one time a week. And it's important. As a district, we've decided that's important, but it is something they would not have that disruption under this model. Again, I'm not saying it's the best model. I'm saying we are being asked to manage our budget differently. And we have ample time for staff across the music where they have more prep. Their work is different and their work is complex. And they have a little bit more prep time than other staff members do. And so we have the ability to consolidate staff by one and run the band program. And the way we thought to do that was co-curricular. Can we do it differently curricular? We haven't figured that out. And still cut a person. It doesn't mean it's not possible. It doesn't mean I won't be back here next week, but we're being asked to engage in challenging conversations and challenging thinking to get the bottom line where it needs to be. We have cut core positions,
Yes.
grade level positions, content area positions, pre-K positions. So I think David deserves the time and the opportunity to share his perspective and have you hear that and hear it honestly and authentically. And I need to make sure that you hear the perspective that not me, the administrative team, at every administrator who has 5th grade band, middle school band, or high school band. We're in the room trying to figure this out as well.
Can I speak to that? Okay. So every one of us on the board comes with different experiences and life experiences. And one of my experiences is about the value of the music program. So Many people know my daughter sustained a brain injury. She had to learn how to read all over again. She was delayed in graduation. Doctor said she would never do some of the things that she's doing today, which is amazing. And the reason that she's doing the things she's doing is because her neurologist said to me, get her music lessons. So had to pay for private music lessons, things like that. We just had a core group of women talking about literacy, right? It is, and you just touched on it. Studies show that students do better who are engaged in music. Because it's not just about learning the instrument. It's about the confidence. It's about their brains literally form different sorts of synapses. And so that brain activity literally makes it easier for them to learn other subjects. And so I think that there is a difference that needs to be talked about. Cutting core positions like the pre-K, that can be attributed to enrollment dropping. But cutting a music program that can benefit students that wish to engage and can give them lifelong skills is a little bit different. I would not support this being co-curricular because it is just such a vital part of a student's life who chooses to do it.
I hear you.
So,
I hear you. I will add, since when we added the 5th position, we had 400 more students than we have in this district now.
okay, that's a very
We have
valid point.
400 fewer students and we lost 92 of them in the last year. So David's speaking of a rebuild, which is authentic and honest, and they're pursuing it actively. And they are getting an uptick in numbers, but they're not, percentage wise, they'll probably get there. But 400 fewer students is a big difference. And we have 5 staff members in performing arts with 400 fewer students than we had when we started the 5th teacher.
But
The
if we
5th teacher
cut-
wasn't always in the district.
If we cut that though, like David said, are we actually increasing barriers for students in order to rebuild?
So
So that's.
my job is teaching and learning, so I don't disagree with you. And I'm being asked by the same body
Yeah, I know.
to tighten up the budget.
Yeah.
And we see
And I don't
that-
mean to challenge you. I'm
No,
just
no, no,
saying
I know,
stuff.
you're
apologize.
not, you're speaking from your heart.
Okay.
I get that.
Okay,
But I'm just trying to make it very clear to all of you, this is a complex situation.
Mhm.
I want to be able to look at David eye to eye forward and say, yeah, as an administrator, I'm advocating for something that from a teaching and learning perspective is a challenging decision to make,
Mhm.
right? That doesn't mean I don't support performing arts and music. It can be perceived that way, but that's not what I'm intending. What we're saying is you, as a board, you said, you need to keep finding a way. We have cut a science position, we've cut a business position, we've cut learning lab, full-time ed tech, we've cut pre-K teacher, we've cut a pre-K position, we've cut 2 kindergarten teachers, we've cut a 2nd grade teacher. We're going on, and I'm saying there's room, because we have 5 music educators, there's room to do programming with 4. This proposal says co-curricular versus curricular. I understand the difference and I understand it's challenging, and you're going to need to make a decision. And then that decision is going to carry forward to the board as a conversation. And that's on you, not me. I'm being charged with a proposal. I'm sharing the proposal. We've talked about this
Megan has a
ahead of
comment.
time.
I'm just wondering about, because I'm also very concerned with what David's talking about, not being able to capture students who aren't gonna go to school early. I have a very hard time getting my middle schooler to school in the morning on the bus, looking at Sarah. And I would have a very hard time getting my 5th grader to school for band. I'm just really having a hard time with just everything that David said is so valid, and everything that you're saying is so valid, of
Yeah,
course.
that's the
This
challenge.
is a very, very challenging, if this happened and we did lose a ton of kids that might have done band, like, is there, like, how can we
Or redo?
Yeah, like how can we re-get those kids like that wouldn't, like when sixth grade rolls around, we're not gonna want, like, yeah,
Can
I don't know why I can't talk right at this moment. I'm so flustered, David. This is
Can I
pathetic for
speak
me.
to that?
Yes,
So the whole COVID situation is a perfect example.
right.
When we had students that left or were pulled from the program, a lot of what I heard was, well, the students will return.
Right.
Well, they don't return. It's, you need to hook them early
Little, right.
and build that interest, build that passion, build that excitement, which is what the beginning program leading into the middle school program, leading into the high school program is all about. We won't, if we go through this, I can tell you from experience that it won't just happen from the course of a redo. And I speak from experience because 31 years ago when I came here, they had cut the fifth grade program. And like a year or two beforehand. So we were doing beginners at the sixth grade level. And we were starting 10 to 12 students that in those years, the administration went, this is not working because we're seeing the negative effects, moving their way up through the middle school and the high school. What do we need to do? We restarted the fifth grade program. We've talked about that where it started off with, okay, we're gonna restart the program, but we're gonna have the general music teachers teach it. Well, they weren't totally qualified to do that. I remember the days of Barbara Packalese, trying to teach trombone and she had it flipped around the other way, but she was trying really hard. And then we realized at that point that it was time to, get someone in,
Right.
who was focused on the fifth grade program. And from there, we saw the numbers start to grow.
Right.
And we saw that program start to build, but it takes time. I mean, we're 5 years out from COVID and we're just now starting to see.
I know, I just wanna see that band come back.
Me too, me too.
Becky has a question, and then we're going to need to
Gonna have
take
to,
a
yeah.
vote,
Yes.
because we'll need to get the other committee going.
So we did start time research, how many years ago?
Yeah, the beginning of my time here.
And
was the
and what the
second year of your
research shows
study.
is that
Yep, I
if
remember
we
that.
flip the day, the younger kids, sorry, doesn't work for you, but it's not gonna work. But the younger kids are more ready to learn because they get up
Oh, that's
earlier
right,
than the
right.
later day kids.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about we're talking about eliminating a position, but not a program. We're talking about changing the time that a program happens and the way that the program is delivered. And I don't know, because I'm not in band, but I don't know. First of all, I trust that we wouldn't make a decision like this without considering whether or not it's in the best interest of students and families. I'm trusting that.
We're trying to mitigate the barriers.
And mitigate barriers and make it positive and not fearful. And I don't want I am the chair of the board and of the finance committee, but I don't want us to make decisions because we're afraid that change could be awful. And I don't know the answer to that particular thing, but I do know that we're trying to balance a budget that's in the best interest of everybody. And you're right, Angela, we have made cuts all across the district, deep cuts. And I know you're trying to rebuild the band, and I know that takes time. I had one child who went all the way through and she loved it, and it made her investigate her love of music, as you know. And she received a college scholarship because she was in band. So I get that, and my heart is there with that. But I also know that we have to be considerate of everybody, our students first and taxpayers second, and that sometimes product delivery has to change to meet the times that we find ourselves. So I will vote today, and I'm gonna think hard about that, but I'm not sure what the best way is. I've gotta believe
Can I
that you guys are doing that.
One more tiny question. Would we be able to like change it again? Like change it back, not have it I'm just thinking.
We're down 400 students less.
We could,
Over 5 years?
Over 5 years. That's a
I'm just
lot.
saying,
That's a big number.
I'm just thinking of, no, it could be
No, no,
wonderful,
not sure.
could be
I
wonderful.
don't know, Megan.
I know.
We have to go, we have to go
It's
back.
just a big number.
I I don't know.
It
I'd
would
like to say
depend.
yes or no, but I don't know.
Just ask you a question. So they're going to get the same instruction,
Yes.
But it's outside of the school day technically.
but it's outside the school day
It's
technically.
before an elementary school starts, they would take a bus or a parent would drop them off. The
So
middle
they-
school, for middle school, it's period one, which is an hour, which is before elementary schools,
Yes.
period one.
Do we, just out of curiosity, in the middle school, do we have eighth graders that go up to the high school for high school math?
Yes. Also limited, same situation.
And it's only one day a week for
We tend to, they have to do
these kiddos. It's not
period
every
one,
day.
and they tend to have to do an elective and high school math. Usually it's math while they're going up. So that they have a routine schedule every day, because high school is every other day and middle school is every day. We have to call a vote because we need to transition.
I don't feel comfortable making a motion, so
I don't-
if somebody else wants to.
You're waiting for a motion to,
I mean, a motion is a motion. You can vote it down or vote it up. I think you need to have something you can share with the board.
I move to vote on whether shifting band to curricular to co-curricular.
Can you make it affirmative or negative, and then we can vote that way? So I make a motion to not support co-curricular, or I make a motion to support curricular.
I make a motion to not support co-curricular.
So I make a motion to not support the co-curricular proposal
Thank you.
in grade 5 band. So if you vote in support of that, you are saying you're not recommending a co-curricular shift. If you vote against that, that's what you're voting against.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, hang on, I gotta write this down. Okay. What is next discussion?
Yep, any discussion?
We've
I
had
don't
lots
think
of
we have discussion, so
Okay.
all in favor of not doing co-curricular? That's what it.
And I'll need your hand up because I have to write it down so that, because I'm not good at this part of it. Okay. Okay, so, or at the moment then, the finance committee will not have the ability to review a cut in the music positions. However, we may have to go back to the drawing board because we are still in a position where we have to reduce the budget. And we have to figure out how, and we have more time available to music educators than we do other educators. So there will be a consequence to that.
So I am wondering this proposed cut, so it won't come to the finance committee, so we can even see what the proposed cut would be.
I don't know how finance works. You'll have to talk about that at finance.
Because I do think we need to, whether it happens or not, I think the finance committee needs to know what it costs.
I think there's other things that
Finance can
finance
talk
needs to
about.
know.
I think finance needs to know a bunch of things, but this is one. We've been brought this by a department brought us something, and to just not consider the cost is not responsible to finance.
Well, to that point, and don't take this the wrong way, please. To bring this proposal, who approached you or asked you to create it?
The administrative team was charged with continuing to reduce the budget.
Got it,
So we made a decision by looking at the workload of our staff and
okay,
figuring out where is there room to make a cut.
got it.
And to do that, we said there's room in music, and the most efficient and effective way to do that would be a co-curricular shift.
Okay, thank you.
And we've been in this position before
Yeah,
where we've asked our administrators to do something and they've come to us and they've said, this is something we can do. We believe this is something that works, that it doesn't hurt kids, correct? Doesn't hurt students?
Doesn't
Well, to
mean
be
it's without
clear,
It
implication.
doesn't mean it has no impact.
Every decision has
Yeah, yeah.
implications.
Everything has an
but
impact.
to be clear, the administration made the implication, not the department.
Yes,
Okay, That's-
but
yeah.
The
but
department's not gonna ask to cut their own.
correct,
Yeah,
nobody's
right.
ever gonna
Let's be
say,
clear.
cut a
Yeah.
science position, cut an English
So,
position. We're not
just-
doing that.
Just a question, so the financial implication would be twofold. It would be the salary of a music teacher.
It's
Yeah.
keeping the 5th person in the budget.
Okay,
Currently.
but then also what would it add to the budget for the different busing routes? So would it
The
be-
buses are already going
Nothing.
by, nothing.
And we went over,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm
already
not trying to
reviewed that
disappoint
with
you, we
Jeff.
already reviewed that, yeah.
I reviewed that with Jeff, just if I wasn't clear about that, I'm
Right.
sorry.
Okay, I might have missed that, I apologize.
And I might not
So-
have been as
Okay.
explicit.
Okay.
We are going to need to table the fourth item, but you do have some information in your packet, and it was really information only. We just started the high school science testing period, and the rest of the testing period starts after vacation. So it was just sort of an FYI anyway, that's in your packet. When we have results, we'll definitely go through those.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration. Thank you, David, for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and thank you for the rest of the time with our literacy facilitators.
We can adjourn at 5:05.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And David, it's never personal with
No,
us.
I know.
It's never personal. I'm just trying to balance the numbers and love the kids.
And I'm always here if
Yeah.
anyone ever has any
Yes.
questions or needs more information or clarification,
I know, it's not personal.
Sorry.
It's hard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My own proxy.
Yeah.